Look, I think they all work hard and they all have different stories. I don't think anyone just makes it for the sake of it in some cases. I had to remind myself, you know what? Yes, they're a billionaire or high profile, but they're just a human at the end of the day, right? They may have many more zeros than the average person in their bank account, but they're smart, they're intelligent people, and the keyword, they're people, they're just human.
Welcome to Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale, your gateway to the deeper dimensions of business and personal growth. This series goes beyond traditional metrics, exploring the philosophies, mindsets, habits, and life lessons from those who've successfully navigated the landscape of entrepreneurship and leadership. Peer into the minds of those who've mastered the art of business innovation, partnerships, and those that are rewriting the rules of revenue. Tap into their actionable advice and practical playbooks that can be used to unlock growth in your own world.
Welcome back to another episode of Growth Unlocked. I'm your host, Kieran Cron. Today we're joined by Samantha Sakr. She has vaulted from an intern to the managing director at Taurus Marketing in just 5 years. She's proof that ambition, authenticity, and guts can fast track you to the top, and she's ready to reveal exactly how she did it. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to this. So, reflecting on your early days at Taurus, was there a defining moment that made you realize that you wanted to move into a leadership position?
Look, I don't think there was one particular moment. I think sometimes just being at work and so involved in a business that there are times where you just organically step up. And if I can look back at my career, I think COVID, that it was a pivotal moment for many people. I think for our business, and certainly what I experienced is we were growing. We have a special offering in tech, and that was the one sector that was booming. So our team worked really well. Remotely, because that's always been part of our culture. That kind of flexibility wasn't very new to us. But I did see a shift in the market and economy, that there was such a big focus on employees and how we were feeling, and our mental health and our physical health. But then from an employer's perspective, no one was really talking about the leaders at the top. And when you are at the top, it can be a bit of a lone wolf situation. So I think I felt that I needed to step up and look after the boss and be part of the business and look at it from a different perspective from just an employee. And I think that organically happened. I stepped up into a leadership role, not on paper, but just through action. Checking in with the boss, what's on her mind, what is it that we should focus on as a business during this time and in a period of uncertainty. And so I think my eye wasn't on the role of leadership, but it was just something that happened organically because I felt that's what I had to do, being part of a business.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I'd take away from what you've just mentioned there is that, often it's around just showing an interest and going above and beyond, like looking outside of the realm of the role and the responsibilities that you have at
Yeah.
that point in time. So, thinking about sort of what you could do to kind of help Sharon and other people in the business, and then kind of really taking on some of that ownership. And it's a really good piece of advice I received from a leader when I was at HubSpot, was that, often it's really important to show that you, or demonstrate that you can do the job before you've even got the job. And so it
Yeah.
sounds like you were kind of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, when you are working for a brand, you represent that brand. So every email you send, every meeting you rock up to, it's not just your name; it's your name from so and so. So Samantha from Taurus. So I always had that mindset that if I'm being trusted in a role to be part of a company and a team, then I have to show up and I have to represent that name. As best as I can. And I guess that was just something I walked into from day one.
Mm, okay. What specific skills did you focus on building during your time as an intern that prepared you to lead the company in such a short span of time?
I guess initiative would be the main one. I think interns, we have a really good internship program, and it's been around for many years. But I think it always comes back to yourself. Like you can have so many opportunities on the table, and you can have the experience, but what are you going to grasp? And I think that takes a big level of initiative. So rather than waiting for a task to be given to you, I used to walk up to the team and be like, what else can I do? So I think initiative was the big one. And also, no one's going to have a voice on your behalf. You got to bring that out for yourself. You got to make an impression. I think I remember I used to KPI myself that if there was ever a team meeting, that I'd have to ask one question. Even if I had no question, I wanted to have a voice in each meeting and not just be seen as a note taker or a guest. So I used to take those type of initiatives and challenge myself. And yeah, I guess that was the main thing that really prepared me, because that will take you, that one quality will stick with you forever.
Mm, yeah, it's a really important one for sure.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I would love to dig into, Samantha, is that, in your role that you've managed some relationships with some pretty high profile entrepreneurs and billionaires.
Yeah.
What unconventional insights about business have you learnt from interacting with these types of people?
Look, I think they all work hard and they all have different stories. I don't think anyone just makes it for the sake of it in some cases. So I think I had to remind myself, you know what? Yes, they're a billionaire, or yes, they are high profile, but they're just a human at the end of the day, right? They may have many more zeros than the average person in their bank account, but they're smart, they're intelligent people, and the keyword, they're people, they're just humans. So how could I relate to them, or what could I add value? They've hired us for a service. They obviously trust me, and I have a responsibility to be that consultant for them. What is it that's going to make me, be on that, feel comfortable enough to be on the same level, to just call them? And for me, it was, at the end of the day, they're just humans. They work hard. They have their own goals. They have a go-getter attitude, and that I took that inspiration and just, I wanted to learn from them, but most importantly, it's have a relationship with them.
Yeah, so true. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people can, fall into the trap of kind of putting, these high flyers up on a bit of a pedestal. I
Yeah.
know it definitely happens, particularly with salespeople as well. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, like we're all just humans, right? And everyone's kind of on a different path.
Yeah.
I also guess, to your point before, that a lot of what you would see with these people would be around their work ethic,
Yeah.
probably strategic mindset, the
Mm.
way that they think about investing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, to your point, I think sometimes we fall into the trap of the comparison game. How do we compare? What am I like versus what someone else? Really, we shouldn't. We should just be in our own lane, focus on our own goal, and use everyone else as just an inspiration or a mentor. Or I'd like, to be like this person and not so much like that, because of the qualities. But it's not what do I look like compared to them, or what role am I in compared to someone else, because we all have our own journey, we all have our own end game. Not everyone wants to be a leader. Sometimes people want to be really good at their job and just grow in on that pathway. So that's the other thing. I think, don't fall in the trap of comparison. Just know your end game and focus on that.
Mm. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I think there's this, it's just human nature, isn't it, to compare? Like you're always comparing, whether it's like people or experiences or products or whatever that might be, like just the
Yeah.
human tendencies to make those
Yeah.
comparisons. And yeah, I think it can be unhealthy for sure if
Mhm.
it's not like put into check.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you've done there is not just make comparisons, but to look to find people who can provide either experience or guidance or mentorship along your journey.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you learn so much from clients, from colleagues, no matter what level they're at in their career. So I think, just have that open mindset, and you never know everything. No one ever knows everything, and if you do, then that becomes boring. Like So yeah, it's all about mindset and just looking at things from a different perspective at times.
Yeah, for sure. I love this concept of Kaizen, which is like 1% better every day. And that's something
Yeah.
that I've tried to stick to as much as possible and always just have that learner mindset. You can even be a professional in a role for 10, 20, 30 years, but there's always something to learn, particularly in the age that we live in now, which has never moved faster with AI and technology, that every day, there's a new startup that pops up, some businesses being disrupted. So I think that's also an element to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I love this whole AI boom that's happening as well. I love that you mentioned it because I think this is the biggest opportunity for everyone to just relearn again and experience what is this AI. Maybe move the fear aside and actually embrace it. Because if we don't embrace, we're going to be left behind. The reality is, it's not that it's coming; it's already here. So that takes everyone that works, even doesn't work. If you've got a mobile device, if you've got a smart TV, you're already in it. So we just all need to kind of embrace. And from a business perspective, I think it'll reshape a lot of how we work, productivity, money, cost. So I think it's an interesting space we all should look at to embrace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's obviously a certain number of kind of professions and industries that are probably at the moment like more at risk or at threat of potentially being replaced. And I think that does scare some people when it comes to AI.
Mm,
But the way that I look at it is, it's like going through the industrial revolution, right? Where like people have to reskill and look at
yeah.
other opportunities. There's so many opportunities out there in the different pathways that you can take, but I think what we're going to see is basically a separation of people that embrace AI, right, and think about it in terms of what problems can they solve. Like thinking about it from a creativity perspective, we're in the technology age with AI, but really what it is the age of creativity, where you're
Mm,
no longer really restricted by what you can do, what you can build with these tools that exist these days. That it's really about the ideas that you have, the intuition,
yeah.
the ability to think about the big picture and solve real world problems that's most important.
Absolutely. And I think as well, what we need to remember is AI is very human prompted. So, that emotional and human intelligence will never be, or at this stage, won't be replaced by AI. So it's how do we work with it? How do we upskill, which is key. Um, and yeah, I think it's too quick to judge if we're not educating ourselves and taking ourselves on the journey because it's already here. And international countries and companies are already embracing it like never before. So yeah, it's
Mm,
striking the balance between um, what is it, and then as well how is it going to affect me, and how do I jump ahead to actually not let it actually replace me completely and replace my relevance um, in my career and use it as a tool.
definitely, because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's
Mm,
just another tool for people to
exactly.
use.
Yeah.
With the space that you play in, do clients come to you asking for questions or advice around AI, or have you guys been doing anything with AI for Taurus or for your clients at all?
Yeah, we're definitely experimenting with it. For us, we launched a shop called Torah Shop on our website, and that allows people from or brands anywhere around the world to purchase our services online. So we've already bridged the gap of how do you make a service a purchasable, product. So we've done that. But in terms of clients as well, I think they're all intrigued. We have a lot of clients who are actually building their own solution because we are in the tech space a lot, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs who come from that sector. But every industry will be tech driven. Every industry will need to implement AI. It's just how do they do it with purpose and without, just ticking a box and saying, yes, we've done AI. What is it actually doing for your business, and how is it going to help your team? So I think
Mm,
there's a series of questions. And like I keep mentioning, I think there's a journey for us to go in and learn this. Um, so that we implement it strategically within any business.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if you saw, like, maybe it's probably more in the other northern hemisphere, but there's a company that's been going crazy in Europe called Lovable,
Yeah,
which are really interesting. So I started to experiment with them this week. It's wild. Like, you can essentially prompt this tool like you would a GPT and get
yeah,
it to build web applications, landing pages, website pages, like within 5 minutes. I spun up an assessment
yeah,
tool online. I was like, that probably would have taken weeks or months to build if I had to go through a designer, get a
yeah,
developer to build that. And I mean, there's another company called Replit in that space that allows people to basically prompt and create software applications.
yeah,
And even now, like, I was like, Replit that I discovered a couple of months ago, there's another new kid on the block. And it's like, it's just crazy how fast these things are moving and businesses are getting
exactly.
disrupted on a daily and weekly basis.
Exactly. It's almost borderline scary, but it's also exciting because the future is here. And, um, you know, I mean, AI isn't necessarily too new. We've had Siri for so long, and that's an AI in itself, but it's just evolving and it's getting embraced by the Northern Hemisphere. And it's I guess it's our turn to be on that um, train.
Definitely. So going back to the leadership side, Samantha, you've got a team that spans across a few different generations. How do you merge fresh perspectives with the wisdom of more seasoned professionals to create a cohesive culture?
It goes back to the basics, brainstorming, setting up those team meetings where it's just getting everyone into a room, briefing them in on what we should be discussing, and embracing everyone's thoughts. It also goes back to open door policy. Um, there's no wrong idea, or there's no wrong or wrong or right time of when to spark that new thoughts. And I think the most important thing about our team and why that works so well is we really hire on core values, and we're all core value aligned. So there's no ego, there's no, this person's this gender and this person's this age. That gets all thrown out the door, and we're all in there as equal people, and we all have ideas, we all have a purpose, and I think that's what makes it really work for us. Um, we have a saying, it's old blood, young minds, because we do have that diverse team. So that's what really makes it work. Just a lot of team time. Make sure everyone that you do have on site and on your team is core value aligned, because then you're all working to the same mission. But yeah, that I think that's what works best for us.
The point you made there around hiring people for core values is so important, and I think that's something that might be overlooked by a lot
Yeah,
of businesses. I mean, when I was at HubSpot, that's one thing I did love is how they had this culture code, and this acronym they used was called HEART, which is humble,
mhm.
empathetic, adaptable, remarkable, and transparent.
Yes,
And I saw that being extremely powerful because when we were going through and assessing like a candidate's fit for the business, it's not just their experience or like how they fit within that part of the like that department, but also do they align with the culture values. And that's
yeah,
massive, right? Because it means that you've got people that kind of see things generally eye to eye. Not to say they always agree with each other, there's kind of healthy
yeah,
debate, but
yeah.
yeah, I think hiring people based off culture and values is really important. So it's such a great point that you've made.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want, 50 of the same people, or three versions who are trying to be a me, or someone trying to be a Sharon. That's not going to get us anywhere. But I'm a big believer you can't train someone to have certain core values. You can't train someone to be loyal or transparent, but you can definitely upskill people to learn the reins of what you do and what your core business is. I'm not saying that skills should be overlooked, but I think there needs to be more than ever now a serious consideration of those core values. And we put them on everything. We put them on job descriptions, on job ads. We are transparent, no bull. That is our core value. So I think that's important. It's important for the team as well. And I get the team involved in the hiring process too. So yes, I qualify, I make sure it's a nice fit, but then at the end of the day, it's a team who are going to work with these individuals. So, I think, yeah, I think everyone has to do what's best for their business, and sometimes just be conscious and cautious of how much you're trying to tick certain boxes.
Mm, yeah, that's such a great point. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes the trap that leadership fall into is hiring based off their CV and their LinkedIn profile, because sometimes you can have this similarity bias where you're looking at,
Mm,
okay, like we've got people on the team that fit this certain profile, and
mm,
then we've got these candidates that we're looking for that have got experience in tech or whatever they might have done previously.
yeah.
But sometimes I find that hiring people from a really diverse background in terms of coming from
Mm.
different industries, and having those different perspectives and walks of life is actually almost more important, to be honest.
Absolutely. Even from different parts of the world. Like
Yeah.
sometimes Australia can be very isolated, but having that external talent come in is important. It's really just striking that balance of, what does the business need? Because it is a business investment hiring someone. So yeah, I also it's very difficult. I don't think it's an easy thing to do when you are hiring. How much can you really know from someone from a few interviews or reading a CV? So it does take instinct. It does take sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes things don't work, but it's just, yeah, that's why I go back to those core values, because if it doesn't work, you can part ways very gracefully, and you can part ways, with both parties, leaving with some sort of value. So, yeah.
Mm, cool. Uh, I guess you have done really well in your career, and I'd love to see what we can do to understand more around that. What advice would you give young professionals who might feel stuck in their role or their current job and don't have a clear pathway to growth?
Good question. I think it's easy to be stuck in that hurdle, but it goes back to map out what your end game is. What do you want your career to be? Because sometimes you could be just going through a tough patch at work, but you actually love the work you do, and you're just clouded by what's happening in the now. So I think it's worth stepping away, even if it's putting in a few days of leave to think about this, because it is a big decision. What is it that you want from your career? What's your end game? What kind of environment do you want to be in? And then map it out and work backwards. Because sometimes when you have that self reflection, you might actually realize you love the place you're in, but maybe not the role or work you're working on. And that could just be simply having a conversation with the person at the top and mapping out, okay, I love the work, I love the environment, I love the company, but I'm not enjoying what I'm working. What can we do? And you come to a new solution. So I think it requires a lot of that thinking time, mapping out your goals, and then making your move. And also just speak up. If you don't ask the question and if you don't have that courage to um, speak with your current team, then you're not in the right environment, because you're obviously not comfortable enough to do that. Um, and it's not an easy thing, but at the end of the day, you got to remember that is your career, that is your long term goal, and it is your life. So you need to take action and really have that initiative and drive to make the changes now and go after what you're hoping to achieve.
Yep, pretty well said. I think that's one thing that is really helpful in this whole journey that we're on, is like kind of thinking about like what's the end state, right? And like
Mm,
when you've got that clarity in terms of where you're going and sort of when you want to be there and why you want to be there, like what's the purpose behind that?
yeah,
um, that then helps you to kind of work backwards from there, right? And kind of start to think about what are the steps that I need to take now, daily, weekly, monthly, over the next couple of years, to essentially start to move towards that. And even having that set out as, say, like a vision board or something similar that you can kind of look at to visualize,
yeah.
really helps you to look forward into the future, which I think helps you to move in that direction.
Yeah, and I think as well, don't give up too easily. Like I think sometimes there's this buzz around finding happiness at work. That's not going to happen. Happiness is a feeling. It's not something that's going to be sustained. But what you do what you should look for is your people and your environment, and can you handle the tough days in the environment you're in, and then celebrate the wins when you get through them in the environment that that you're working in. So I think that's another thing. Look at the short term but the long term goals. Are you in an environment where you do feel empowered? Do you not? So there's a lot of emotional, but more so the hard facts that you need to look at when choosing your career. And I always say this: you're at work and with the people you work with more than you are at home these days. So you need to really be in an environment where you do feel like you can fly, or at least have a voice to change things around for you.
Mm, yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Samantha, you mentioned that it can be difficult to ask for what you want at work. Could you share a time that you advocated for yourself and how it changed your trajectory?
Look, I think I've been very lucky with Taurus, where we do have that culture where it is open doors. But I guess I throughout this podcast, I have been speaking a lot about speaking up. And I think what changed my whole career and shaped where I am now is the very first conversation I had towards the end of my internship, where I walked up to Sharon's desk and I said, look, if you have 5 minutes today at any time, can we just have a chat? And she dropped everything she was doing. And I'm not saying every leader is going to do that. I might have caught her at the right time, but she dropped everything and she sat with me. And I said, look, I'm enjoying the work here. I love the environment. If at any point there's a role for me, I'd love to hear about it and apply for it. And the rest is history, I guess. But it was that one conversation. If I never did it, if I never just walked up to her desk and requested that meeting, then, I don't know where I'd be now. But, I think it's just worth sometimes pushing back the, oh my gosh, the what if, and just go for it.
Mm, yeah, the old expression of you don't ask, you don't get is usually pretty true in life, isn't it?
Exactly. And I love, and I mentor my team with this all the time. When you're not sure about if you should or shouldn't do something, just think about the worst case scenario. In that instance, what would have been my worst case scenario? No, sorry, there's no jobs available. And when you always pinpoint what the worst case scenario is for any situation, you realize it's really not that bad. It's actually worse off if you didn't do it and wonder the what if. So that's another thing that I've embedded in my mindset.
Mm. Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of courage because I think it's easy to say, and a lot of people, don't always have the courage to do that. But it's really
Mm.
what it is, isn't it? I think it's just removing that fear in your mind about like rejection or someone saying no. But when you really break it down, I mean, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. And I think there's another expression I like is like, you don't make any of the shots that you don't take. If
Yeah,
you think about that from
exactly.
like a basketball perspective or even sports in general. So
Yeah,
yeah, you just gotta ask and really like, you might reality is you're probably gonna get a lot of no's in your life, but sometimes you do
absolutely.
get the yes, and those yeses unlock a lot of growth
Yeah, and you know what? Even if you get the no, like that's okay. That is a sign that it wasn't the door that was meant to be open for you.
mm,
Sometimes life will work out in its own way, and you kind of just you gotta take the hiccups, you gotta take the rejections, and you just gotta ride the wave, because there is no rule book to life or work. You just gotta do it and try every day.
for sure. Yeah. It's been great getting to see how you've stepped into this leadership role, and more we're seeing sort of females step up into senior leadership positions, which is amazing. I think there should be more of that, particularly in the tech industry. Um, what's the biggest mindset shift that you think might be needed for women to move from being in their current role to potentially a more senior leadership role in the future?
Look, I think really invest in your personal brand and be yourself with purpose and on purpose. I think no matter what, a business is investing in you, you need to you need to show that investment and return on investment in a way. So I think just you have about 30 seconds every time you enter a room, even 20 seconds, to make an impression. What are you going to leave people remembering about you? And I think not just women, anyone in the workplace has to really make that impression. I think you need to show up all the time, dress up, show up. And I don't mean, be the glam queen or king of the room. If you're on a construction site, you need to come up in your uniform on time with all your safety gear and show up for that role. So showing up, being yourself with purpose, and investing in your personal brand, I think is very key, because no one else is going to invest in it for you. You need to have that voice. You need to show the room that age, gender, and any other diversity criteria does not really matter when you have something to show and something to prove and something to work for. I think another thing is, and we spoke about it before, is definitely play the role before you get the role. And also, I guess that's not always the case in every situation, but you need to show some sort of initiative and have that value add. Study the room, know who you're about to speak to. Not everyone wakes up confident. I don't think you're born with confidence. Sometimes you just got to show up and act confident, and then your brain will trick you in thinking you've got this. And as long as you do your study and you know what's happening in your environment and the people you're about to meet with, that'll happen organically. You will know and show your worth and what you mean for that role. It's just a matter of going back to the basics again. Who am I in the workplace? What does my personal brand stand for? How is everyone going to remember me by? And I think you just gain the respect and you evolve into that very organically when you just are consistent and yeah.
Great points. Yeah, definitely agree with a lot of those. To round things out, Samantha, let's say if you could teleport yourself and go back in time and have a conversation with Samantha at age 18, what advice would you give yourself?
Slow down, for sure. Slow down and celebrate the small wins. Someone's always told me, just stop and smell the roses, because I think that's really important. I think we get so caught up on what's next. Just slow down and enjoy the moment and be present.
Simple but very effective. I think
Yeah.
sometimes, people are always looking for the next thing, but just being appreciative as well, looking back on what you've achieved is really powerful.
Yeah, and never forget where you came from and who helped you get where you are. I think it's easy for people to forget, who really helped them and who was supporting them. And I think never take that for granted and always show it back. If someone's supporting you, support them back no matter what.
Yep. Excellent. It's a great way to round it out. If people want to connect with you or follow you on your journey or learn more about what you're doing now, where's the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn's really good. I think that's the platform of the future of networking. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Samantha, thanks so much for your time. It's been an excellent conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale. If you enjoyed the show, it would really be appreciated if you can leave a 5-star review wherever you consume your podcasts. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes? If you'd like to learn about how to drive profitable scale in your business, gain clarity on your direction, and improve your business valuation, click the link in the show notes to connect with Kieran.